Hey folks, today's video is covering Dev Diary 164 Realm Maintenance. This is all related to the upcoming 1.15 Crown update, which is a free patch coming to Crusader Kings 3. It sounds like before the Chapter 4 content releases for the game, of which we'll get more news tomorrow of. So do make sure you like the video today and subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk about all that tomorrow. But for today, we're going to go over this Dev Diary. This is calling out the highlights of this patch, and the patch itself, this is done through what they call Realm Maintenance. This is where the team, I won't go into it too much, it is in the Dev Diary. I'll leave a link to it as always in the description down below. But pretty much what they're saying here is they have like downtime between doing other updates. Well, not really downtime, but they have time that they set aside to this Realm Maintenance. And what that is going over old features, going over old bugs, things like that, and making improvements to the game. Quality of life updates, things that the community have asked for. And you're going to see through this whole Dev Diary a whole bunch of things related to that. Army changes, AI changes, court position changes, a bunch of things. So anyway, there's a lot for us to go through, so we'll get straight to it. I'll leave some chapter times in the video in case you don't want to follow everything, just highlighting the major points. But to start with, we are getting the court position rework. This was highlighted previously, and this is going to go into some more detail. So as they say here, last year they teased this rework, and since then they've refined it and added even more improvements. In short, the rework aims to make court positions more interesting and engaging, adding tools, adjusting costs, improving quality of life, and making the UI less of a hassle to use. And you can see here, we did get a screenshot of this previously, but it has changed, as they mentioned. You can see now the UI for the court positions looks a lot more like the standard council UI, but it does show as well the costs, how good somebody is at that role, and then the three kind of like mini tasks that they can do related to that. And it looks like, as it's shown here, that all these roles now have some kind of mini task that they can be set to. The new layout also allows you to see more positions at once, as we've seen, and presents them in a more immersive way. All of the information is still there. Most of what you don't need to see at all times has just been moved to a tooltip, as you can see this next screenshot. So you can see all the kind of major information on the screen to start with, and then you can hover over it and see like the requirements, other things that you don't need to see all the time, but you might need to see at certain points during your campaigns. At the bottom of each list, they've also added a new foldable category that reveals all positions that you could potentially have. It excludes anything you cannot possibly get, such as adventurer officers for landed characters and vice versa. The tooltip will also tell you what you can do in order to get those roles as well. So if there was a role that you see and think, oh, that would be quite nice to my realm, you can look at it and it will tell you how you can pick that up. The next thing is something that we've all called out for ever since this system was added, and that is automation. You can see that on the screen now. You're now going to be able to get it so the AI will automatically fill these roles. This is something I've wanted, like I said, ever since this came in, because sometimes it's kind of annoying to constantly have to go in and refill these positions. And also, when the person who was in that position died, you got like one of those little events in the right-hand corner. But if you miss that, you might not even realize the role had been vacated apart from your court physician. So again, this is going to automatically fill it under the requirements you see on the screen, and then you don't have to worry about this too much. You still might want to go in and fine-tune it a little bit, but for the most part, you can just automate this, which is fantastic. You don't have to carry on going in there checking that the roles are filled that you want. Another thing they've called out here is that a lot of the court positions were never used due to the cost of them actually being used by somebody. Again, I will agree with this. A lot of them were pretty good, but they were like 2 or 3 gold, if not more at some point, and you just didn't have the cost for the most part to get that benefit back from it. So what they've done is lower the gold cost for some of them and added a prestige cost as well. So lower gold cost, but some prestige is going to be in there as well. So that's something that you can use now to pick some of these up. And also, we're usually swimming in prestige, especially middle to late game. So this is something to use some of that prestige up as well, which I think is a good use. And then on top of that, the tasks as well, they also have a cost. Some of them gold, prestige, some even cost piety. So again, these are going to be something to use up a little bit of those stockpile points that you build up, especially later in the game. Most positions now come with an interesting effect for the holder of the position, such as a 20% stewardship bonus for some of them. This also means that they've opened up a lot of court positions to be held by vassals, which is interesting because, and then they show this screenshot here, request court position. So you now can request a court position from your liege, allowing you to reap some of the benefits that they convey, such as a royal architect now reducing the build time or cost, or the court poet now reducing your stress gain, general opinion, and diplomatic lifestyle XP. So yes, you can now, outside of requesting the council positions, you now can also try get these court positions off your liege, try get some of the bonuses that these do provide. I mean, food taster, maybe you're trying to get that role to do something a little bit more nefarious, but if he gives it to you, that's his problem, not yours. Outside of that, you can also grant court positions directly via the character interaction now, making it easier to, for example, appease angry vassals with ceremonial positions. And they've added a bunch of ceremonial positions. You can see those on the screen now, a whole bunch of these giving different bonuses. What is stat stacking? Look, let's not just ask about that at the moment. There are also some changes coming to the character interaction screen where you right-click a character and get the options. They're going to talk about that in a minute as well. Some fantastic changes. And all those minor tasks you see on the screen, that isn't everything. There are a bunch more of these. They do go into even more detail around this in the dev diary, but I want this video to be a little bit shorter, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can go to the dev post and read up all about it, but they really explain what some of these positions give and what some of these bonuses are, so that is a good change there. The next thing they're going to talk about is automated armies. Another feature they did tease last year. They did talk about this in December, I think it was. This is an opt-in feature where the AI takes control of your armies and fight wars for you. The intent behind this feature is to allow you to focus on other things while engaged in trivial wars, and to allow players unfamiliar or uninterested in warfare to enjoy the game a little bit more. Again, folks, it's not a map painter, it's a role-playing game. We all know that. If you are an experienced player, they still recommend for you to actually control your armies yourself, but give it a spin in some trivial wars. And we've seen the screenshot before, but showing the options here at the moment, you can have this. I'll probably use this for like rebellions, or if I've maybe got a very large realm and I just want to take over like an individual county for whatever reason, I could declare that war and then just have the AI fight that war for me because it's going to obviously win and I don't have to worry about it too much. I could get back to doing my hunts or, dying to some event that is happening at the same time. And then coupled to this, to make this system work even better, you need to know what the AI is thinking and for the AI to play well. And the first thing they're going to talk about is the AI ally info. That is a tongue twister. Sometimes you have an ally in a war that you have no idea what they're thinking, but this will also work for your automated armies that they were just talking about. Perhaps they're just standing there, moving erratically, or generally being unhelpful. We've all seen that. Armies kind of jumping between two tiles, or really just going in loops and things like that. Quite often, this is because of something you're not aware of. Perhaps they are resupplying their armies. Perhaps they are guarding a siege. To make this more transparent, what they've done is added some icons. You can now see what that AI army is doing. So you can see in this first one, the Isle of Man army, this is moving to start a siege. So you'll look at this and think, okay, they're going to this certain place. It is commanded by a ruler. They'll talk about that at the end of the dev diary. And then also you can see where they're going and you can plan a little bit. I guess depending on how often this changes, maybe they lock into these a little bit earlier. So you wouldn't look at this and think, okay, they're moving to siege this place down. You go look somewhere else. You come back and you're like, oh, they didn't do that. They went off to fight a battle instead. But at least it's giving you some idea about what they're going to be getting up to. You can see that again in the next screenshot. There's one army sieging down a fort, and then the army next to them, you can see that icon on it. It means they're defending the fact that the other army is sieging. So if another army comes in towards this, an enemy, the other army that's on the kind of defensive shield icon, they'll run off and fight them and leave the other army sieging it down if possible. So again, that is a fantastic change. And you can see that's the case. If you look at this and think, okay, well, I can use my army somewhere else. They're fine there. And then let that play out and see what happens in that case. The other part of that they were talking about is the warfare AI and fixing and updating this. So they've done a lot of work, they say, on improving this area of the game. They're not promising miracles. I mean, I don't think we expect that. But they have spent over 2 months of programmer time nailing down bugs, improving subpar behavior, and changing behavior that didn't feel right, even if it was intended to work that way. These include a lot of cases where the AI would be indecisive, passive, or dance between provinces that we were just talking about, which was often caused by competing systems trying to avoid attrition, match supply limits to stack. This, in combination with the system we just talked about, should result in better warfare, clearer warfare, and you being able to see what your ally is getting up to. And then they've also taught the AI about war score, which is kind of wild, 4 years old game, making sure the AI actually knows how wars are won. But I know what they mean here. It isn't as simple as that. So rather than arbitrarily choosing actions based on a set of circumstances that were always fixed, they will now do actions leaned on actually winning the war. So for example, they are less likely to pursue battles if you've already capped the battle war score. So if it's at 50% for most CBs, and as we know, doing more fights doesn't actually progress your war score, in that case, the AI will now go and actually siege places down rather than trying to find fights to fight, because it will then understand this isn't actually helping us win the war. We need to siege down some land. So a fantastic change there. It's It'll be very interesting to see how this actually changes how wars play out in the game. I would imagine it's going to make a very big change to it, but we'll see once it is implemented. An area of the game they also wanted to change was also during the Crusades. So they decided to take a suggestion from the community and give these Great Holy Wars some special treatment. The one-size-fits-all philosophy out the window now, and the AI will now use a set of special procedures during these larger wars. This was something they teased yesterday, and it is what they're going to talk about now. So firstly, they've made some smaller tweaks. The AI will care less about attrition and supply until they've made some major headway, and they will try to boat hop a little bit less. This is where you'll see them use boats to move up and down the Holy Land instead of just walking. They're trying to reduce that a little bit, which would make sense. Also, when you're going from a well-supplied Europe by boat, disembarking into low-supplied dry lands will also give you the disembarkation modifier, and they're going to try avoid them doing that as well. Disembarking straight into the enemy doomstack and just constantly wiping. Again, something we've seen a lot, and that is something they're trying to get rid of as well. So by the sounds of this, they're going to try and make like a beachhead, make a good bit of siege down land, and then care about supply and attrition. So I guess these wars might end that a little bit faster, because I suppose they will take attrition at the start a little bit more, but they should pretty much gather a big bit of like siege land, then worry about getting their attrition back to normal and things like that. So again, this should work pretty well if it works how they think it should. And then outside of that, something again that was in the spoiler yesterday is that the attacking army will now find a gathering area and move their armies there before they actually head off on the crusade. So for the first stage of a Great Holy War, the attacking AI will find a good supply area where they can gather all their forces, because as we've seen, armies, especially on the Catholic side, are risen up all across Europe, and then they piecemeal, as I said yesterday, kind of drip into the Holy Lands and get wiped very, very easily. What they'll do now, for example, if there is a crusade in Jerusalem, they'll go to Rome, bring all their units together, and then head off as one unified, or at least a little bit more unified army, and go in and then try to do that beachhead stuff they were just talking about. You will also, as we saw yesterday, see an icon telling you where they're going to gather the forces, so you can then go join them. Or if you want to cheese the mechanics, go into the Holy Land, get your army stack wiped, and win the contribution war anyway. And then, as you can see in this screenshot, that is what we saw yesterday, the staging, in this case, somewhere else. And then they're going to head off into the Holy Lands and try win this crusade. The staging area is the closest friendly or neutral area to the war target. In this example on the screen, it is Byzantium. The attacking forces will make their way there before starting the assault, which means they will arrive much more unified, as we were just talking about. This also means that they won't immediately attack from the water, avoiding those disembarkation penalties and ensuring their stacks have an acceptable degree of supply. Instead, they will also much more likely march via land, taking a modicum of attrition along the way, but ultimately arriving in a much more unified way. So as we said, they're not going to come in on boat straight into Jerusalem and just get wiped constantly. I mean, it might happen here or there, but it sounds like, as they've said here, they're more likely to gather in Constantinople, not do a fourth crusade on them, and then go through Anatolia and then head down into the Holy Lands. And this system isn't just for Catholicism, but it is the example they gave. If you've got other kind of holy wars, a similar thing is going to happen as well. And they leave off this section by saying in the tests they've done, they've seen a lot more successful crusades, but they do say it's not going to happen every time. And I don't think we want that. I don't want the crusades to always work, but I do want them to have at least more of a chance of working. And all these changes they've shown off already, I think do lean towards that potentially happening. And with that, that is the major warfare changes. Next, they're going to talk about some other changes that are coming. There's plenty still to go here. So the next one, as I said earlier, is the character interaction UI update. And you can see that on the screen. I really like this. They've kind of split the UI here into the different areas. So diplomacy, personal, hostile. In this example, fellow governor. So it's a lot easier to see something that you might be looking for and kind of bunching everything together that is something that you might want to do. So, you know, swaying or learning languages in the same area, murdering or challenge status, hostile actions are all grouped together. It's a lot more easier to kind of look at this and get into it and kind of do what you want to do in these interactions. With these changes, you can now more easily see if a scheme is personal, hostile, or political, with the predicted scheme difficulty shown next to it, making it easier to see if you could be pursuing this without having to delve into each interaction. This, again, is a fantastic change, because you go into one of these, you then get the scheme UI, you try fill that up, and you're like, oh, this isn't worth doing anyway. Whereas now you can just look in one place, you open up the interaction, and you can immediately see, as you see on this screenshot, 2 down red arrows. I'm going to guess that means you can do this, but it's not going to be successful, or it's going to be very hard to. so you're not going to click it and you're going to think of doing something else instead. You can also, as shown here, have a favorite button and then just highlight certain ones that you're going to be doing a lot, which again is a fantastic change as well. And one of the reasons why they've added this favorite system is because they've moved some of the less commonly used items into a sub-menu of their own. But if you are a player that does want to do that kind of interaction every time, you can favorite it. And then at the top of the character interaction, as you can see here, is going to have your favorite. So you can just quickly click on a character. I want to go around murdering everyone or raiding their estate. And that's always going to be the top options for you. Again, a really nice addition there, nice quality of life interaction change. On top of this, whenever it made sense, they've also added a quick interaction button that contains a collection of relevant interactions to that context. These buttons have been added in various places, such as interactions with your head of faith, on your admin liege, or on admin governors in the theme menu. If you are a modder, you can also make some cool changes to this as well. We'll see what different mods like Game of Thrones use this for. But you can see the example here, the Pope. You no longer have to click the interaction menu, click ask for something. It then opens a different UI to ask for one of these three options. You can now just right click him and see these options immediately, which is fantastic as well. Just save some clicks and it's the same feature, so why not do it this way? The next thing they're going to talk about is right clicking to raise armies. It's finally here. This was a post, I think, on Reddit like 2 years ago, and I guess they really took it to heart. So now you can right-click on a specific area, and it will raise your armies here. This is pretty much replacing the rally point system. They do say that system will be staying, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they might even remove that system entirely if they see people no longer using it. This is great. This is something that should have been in the game to begin with. You can just right-click anywhere on your map and say, raise my armies here if it's within your realm, and your armies will just raise there, and then off you go. This is a cool addition. You can see that in the screenshot here. Raise all armies. Levies will be raised at their closest rally point. If you right-click it, it's going to be there. Next is some changes coming to the admin government type, and there's going to be some clan changes coming soon as well. So going hand in hand with the court position rework, a new court position has been added for independent rulers of admin realms, the eparch. That's probably not how you pronounce it, but it's how I'm going to pronounce it. The eparch focuses on improving your capital in various ways. The tasks are expensive, but the effects are significant. Being the eparch is also very attractive for vassals as they get a significant influence boost, which is pretty cool. And you can see in the next screenshot a bunch of the options they have. And again, some nice bonuses here. Control growth, development growth, stationed armies improvements, some popular opinion bonuses as well. So this is something that you'll want, or if you're a ruler, you'll give this to somebody that you like, or if they're very good in this area. Going hand in hand with this new role is a new capital building. This improves the aptitude of this role, among other things. It can only be built in the capital of an admin realm, and you can see here the base version of it. Tax improvements, holding tax improvement as well, and then monthly prestige per court position 1%, monthly domicile influence plus 2%, and it also increases the aptitude of that court position. And there's also 7 upgrades to this. I'm sure it's very good at the end. Not everything, however, is going to be easier for admin realms. They've taken a look and they've thought it's too easy for them to hold onto their lands, even when engaged in civil wars or otherwise weakened. I will agree with this. I think Byzantium has been crazy powerful. Who would have thought that was going to happen when they announced these changes? But this is going to try counteract that a little bit. So they've added a new CB that can only be used on admin realms, Seize Peripheral Duchy. This allows you to take a duchy that is outside the Empire's de jure borders for a very low prestige cost. This CB has 3 times the siege and battle war score for the attacker and significantly faster ticking war score, making it a perfect way to reclaim lands from the otherwise preoccupied Empire. I think this fits in quite well with admin realms. So this is talking about things outside of their de jure borders, so lands that they've conquered. They're still trying to get them under control. You can think of it that way, but then another army can come in and say, well, you know, I'm going to try grab this, and kind of role-playing it out. You're thinking like the Emperor or whatever is unable to fully control these new areas properly, and somebody can run in, grab them and say, that's my empire now, thank you very much. So again, a really good change here. I think it will prevent some of the blobbing that we do see from Byzantium and other realms if you have them turned on in the game rules. Alongside of this, they've also reworked the order mass arrest decision to be a character interaction. You can now use this on all noble families, not just powerful families. As long as their estate is located in the capital, They've also tweaked the options for when you restore the Roman Empire, such as offering a path to Hellenic without activating Roman hard mode, as well as making said mode more enjoyable by tweaking event frequencies and removing the parts that made little sense, such as increasing diseases. So some other fixes there around all that content that got added, especially around the Roman stuff. That is cool. An easy way to become Hellenic. I know that was a problem a lot of people had with that content. Next, they're going to talk about the clan government tweaks. This area of the game is also getting some improvements. They do say here this is fairly underplayed and that the AI struggles to play it properly. I would probably agree with this as well. I don't often play clan. I don't know if it's because of how clan works, though. I do actually quite like how it works. But anyway, there are some improvements coming. This has prompted them to take a look into making things a little bit more interesting and less frustrating to play. What they noticed was, especially when managing tax jurisdictions, it was a constant battle to find a competent tax collector. All you have at your disposal is unlanded courtiers and a decision that has a fairly long cooldown, which leads to frustrating times where you're trying to, get people to come in, fill up the roles. Oh, they probably die or move away. You've then got to try find somebody else to fill the role, and all the time you're missing those bonuses. So they're going to change how this works, and there's a screenshot here on how the UI looks now. I think it looks relatively the same, but the major change they've done is they've opened up the possibility for vassals to become tax collectors. This makes it much easier to find them and to have good ones, because obviously your vassals are sticking around for the most part. Similar to how they've handled court positions, landed tax collectors get a penalty to their aptitude, but on average, it is much easier to find a good tax collector because of this change. Especially if you're a smaller realm, this is going to be great. If you're a huge empire, it wasn't that much of an issue. But if you were a smaller clan realm, it was very hard to fill these at times. This is going to just make it a whole lot easier. And it also has got that automatically assign option, so you don't even have to worry about it too much. Clan rulers now also don't have to worry about being allied to all their vassals, as only powerful vassals will be expected to be allied to their liege. This will allow you to focus on pleasing a few select characters in your realm without having to suffer a permanent -20 opinion with every vassal. You also will no longer gain a legitimacy penalty for marrying lowborn characters as secondary wives, which is a great change. It was really annoying that was the case with this, because it's my secondary wife. Does it matter if she's highborn or anything? That has been removed, but to preempt any exploits, they've also made it that switching to a lowborn spouse as your primary spouse will trigger a lowborn marriage penalty, so you can't just cheese this to get really good wives. I'm sure you can, but they have counted that somewhat. This means that as long as your main spouse is highborn, the remaining ones can be lowborn. The AI has also been updated to always try set the spouse with the best stats as their primary one, as long as it doesn't trigger the lowborn spouse marriage penalty. You can see on the screen here some updated tax decrees. They go on to say here that all tax decrees have been updated with more interesting and modern effects, including systems that have been added since this was added to the game, which again is great. They're adding future content into old content to make it so everything kind of synergizes together that little bit better. So they've added legitimacy, danger, plague resistance, and enabled systems that are logically connected to each decree, like raiding for one of the examples. These changes match the clan realm's more volatile nature, providing bonuses that are more relevant and interesting to choose from. You should now more closely be able to match the power that feudal realms can muster with their vassal contracts, so really bringing them up that little bit more so you can go up against feudal. That is all the changes around governments, really, for the most part. Next, they're going to talk about tiered commander traits. This is an awesome change. I know I've said this a lot during this dev diary, but all these changes are really good, and this is a great one. So all commander traits are now tiered traits that level up by taking actions relevant to the trait, which is awesome. You are what you do is something that I love seeing in games. So if you do a lot of sieging, your character will become better at sieging, and then they'll be better at sieging, so you'll do more sieging. That is just a great way for this to work, leaning into that role-playing side of the game that little bit more. So to begin with, commander traits will now be less impactful to start with, but they will get better and better, and potentially even better than they are now. So a fully leveled military engineer reduces siege phase time by 40%. A fully leveled flexible leader reduces enemy defensive bonuses by 80%, which is better than you could currently hit. And again, this is a really nice change. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But I always love these traits that actually get better the more you do something. And we have seen that with the traveling traits, all those new ones they added with that content. I think they've seen how well they've gone, and they're now moving back and adding them to previous traits as well. To level these traits, you need to do whatever makes sense. To build up an aggressive attacker, you need to win offensive battles. To level up a military engineer, you need to do sieges. The higher the commander's martial skill, the faster they will level up. This means that a commander with a high-level commander trait will be extremely valuable, as replacing their accumulated knowledge of warfare is not a trivial task. Again, making the interactions with your characters in your realm that little bit more important. Maybe I won't click through events quite as easy as I do on the live streams. I'll have to pay a little bit more attention, I guess, now, because I don't want to lose somebody very, very important. Next, they're going to talk about the barbershop. I know a lot of people use the barbershop mod, but they are making improvements to the base version. So many items that were previously not accessible have been added, and you can now also more freely choose between, and you can now more easily choose between different items that previously wouldn't go together. You can see some examples on the screen now, some pretty funny ones, especially the last one where he's got the mask on. He's also got the glasses on, and then he's got a helm with a mask on as well. So yeah, they do say, do be careful with this. Don't make horrific combinations, but you know, you can do what you want. So why not do that if you can? That is the end of the major changes. I will say, I meant to mention this at the beginning, there is a full change log at the end of this. It wasn't really called out that obviously, but there is a full change log. I'm not going to go through it all because there's a lot to talk through on that, and most of it is covered here. But the next changes are all going to be minor or miscellaneous changes. The first one is AI promote culture tweaks. They point out here that long game culture maps are often quite boring, with culture maps gradually becoming more and more populated by small divergences. The huge names that would be just divergences, divergent of this, and then merging them all together. And you could end up with weird combinations there. This is fine in cases where these divergences led to interesting new cultures expanding their presence on the map, but often it didn't work out that way. So what they've done is they've tweaked the UI to be more inclined to promote their culture based on certain circumstances. In this example, Central Germanic heritage cultures within the HRE will now want to promote cultures in Sorbian culture counties. Very small cultures will want to grow if they are below 10 counties. Imperious cultures, this is cultures with a powerful culture head, realms of over 30 counties, and a king or better title. They will want to continue to grow to a decent size. Smaller cultures or divergent hybrid cultures with no existing culture head are more likely to be promoted by other cultures with the intent of reducing the amount of small and orphan cultures by the end of the game. This makes the culture map look more dynamic and make a more interesting result during your games. So what does all that mean? I think it means that the larger cultures are going to try and impose themselves on the smaller cultures, especially if they're hybridized but they're never spread anywhere. They're probably going to get wiped out relatively quickly, and the larger cultures are either going to hold where they are or expand out a little bit as well. So it's going to be less like border gore with cultures. We're going to see more like blocks of good cultures. It's not going to get rid of hybridized or divergent ones, but those ones need to hybridize and then kind of relatively quickly spread and do well, or they're going to fade away with time, which does work quite well historically. The next thing they're going to talk about is game rule updates. They've added several new options in the realm stability game rule based on community feedback, and a few extra for good measure. You can now set stability to only affect the AI, and there are several additional settings that avoid changing the frequency of peasant and populist factions, as those could become too frequent or not frequent enough depending on your setting. So this just allows you to set like how stable a realm is, and then how often like the fallout of that actually kind of is seen on the map itself. You can see the options there. I won't go through them all, but this is a great change as well. Outside of that, for those who enjoy the occasional Scourge of the God Conqueror but think that 5% is too much, they've also added a new rule, low random, with a 0.5% chance of this happening. This is cool, but they didn't make the change I kind of did want, which was where you can inherit the Conqueror trait, but it be a very, very small percentage. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense where the default version, if you don't change this, is that the person that inherits the title also becomes a Conqueror. I don't think that really makes sense historically, and it really is kind of weird to see on the map. I think the default options should be no inheritance or a very small percentage, really just to match this. Maybe inheritors have a 0.5% chance of inheriting being a conqueror, as well as becoming a Scourge of the God as well. So I don't know. I'd like to see that change, but that isn't something that was called out here. Next, they're going to talk about settings options. We won't go into this too much, but the message setting window now has a history log of all feed messages, so you can browse through them at a later date. I actually like this change because I often clear out that as often as I can, but then there is something that might have happened and I'm like, oh, when did that happen? And now you can scroll through and see the history of this. I'm guessing it doesn't go too far back, as I would imagine that would be a bit of a resource hog, but at least if you do clear that, you can go back and see what happened. They've also added some community requested message settings, scheme advantage, and non-dynastic courtiers coming of age. So you can now change where these appear in your UI, if they appear in the feed, if it's a pop-up, if it's one of those toast things that come down and tell you these are some good changes here, especially the scheme advantage. I think that's a cool way for you to be able to kind of customize where that shows. The non-dynasty member child comes of age in the court. That is a good addition as well. Next is Guardian status in Courtier's UI. There is now new indicator text and filter options for finding children without guardians in your court. This is present both in the right-hand side court menu and in the character view. This again is a great change because I usually just get bored of trying to remember who needs a guardian, who has one, who doesn't. You can now set this filter and then go through everyone and set them up as much as you want. So you can kind of fine tune your children as much as you want, at least in the way you can with the system. Next, they're going to talk about 2 new major decisions. These are kind of out of nowhere. We're getting 2 new options here. So the first one is Home of the Rivers. This is in the Tigris and Euphrates area, and you can see the requirements and what you get in this screenshot. So you'll get a new empire, you'll get a new nickname, Sovereign of the 2 Rivers. You also gain the option to become a holy monarch. It will also boost your counselor tasks for promoting cultures. You will also get some other possible outcomes as well. If you focus your empire on learning, you will get knowledge as power. If you focus your empire on martial, you get discipline and order. If you choose to convert to this faith, you'll also increase how good that faith is as well, and some character interactions around converting things as well, which is really nice to see. And then when adding a new decision for creating new empire tiles in Crusader Kings, there are 2 things they look for. One is an interesting alt history empire for a historical group or region, like the one we just looked at. Another is to look for a great empire that existed during the historical timeline, but which is currently not able to be formed in the game. The second one is one of those, that is found the Empire of Hindustan, and you can see here you get the satrapy, you also get the empire title. The Empire of Hindustan becomes your primary title. All owned kingdoms in the empire become de jure part of this. You adopt admin government, you gain lawgiver, and you gain a bunch of influence as well. This is a really cool one. The Islamic conquest of India is not something that happened in every game, but when it did happen, you never got anything that was kind of like the Delhi Sultanate. The new decision lets a Muslim ruler who controls a fair chunk of the north move his capital to Delhi or Lahore, while creating a new empire title that incorporates any held land in the 3 Indian empires. If you have roads to power, it will also make you an admin government through one of the hereditary successions instead of acclamation. So that is really cool. I love these additional ones they add in. This will make a really fun campaign. Let me know if you do play it out, but actually being able to go in there, form the Delhi Sultanate, and play that out and become admin and have all that kind of gameplay as well. I really like that change. And then the last thing, if you're stuck out this video for this long, is commanded by ruler banner. You could see this in the pop-up when you hovered over an army. It would tell you if a ruler was leading that army, but now you're going to get that visually on the map, and you can see that here. You get that little crown icon, so you know, oh, I'm going to target that army and try capture their ruler, something along those lines. But you can now see this without having to go into the tooltips. And with that, that is the end of the dev diary this week. As mentioned, there is a spoiler here that you can click, and it will show you the entire patch notes. So I guess this is coming soon. It does say here the update will be with you soon, but they don't say when. I imagine maybe next week, because the whole changelog's here, so the patch must be ready to go. The one thing I will call out at the top of this is paid content crowns the world. This is the instant unlock for Chapter 4, so maybe this patch is coming tomorrow when Chapter 4 gets announced, because then we'll know for sure what all Chapter 4 is going to be. I mean, we do know already, but tomorrow we'll know for sure. And this is similar to other instant unlock. This is some clothing, some headgear, some beards. And what does it include? As you can see, contents of the Crown of the World. You get some stuff from all around the world, really. There's some Step Commander's beard, mustache of Vladimir the Great. There's also Crown Princess Olga of Kiev's headgear, and also the Crown of Charlemagne. So maybe we are getting some coronation content. I mean, we know we are, but, you know, it is confirmed here. We are getting the Crown of Charlemagne. And as I said, the rest of the patch notes are here. I'm not going to read through them because there's a lot of them, and we've covered the highlights during this video. But do go to the link in the description if you do want to read these. But anyway, let me know what you think about all these changes. I think every change here has been great. Hopefully they also make some stability and game performance improvements with this. Maybe they'll come with the first DLC. If we are getting China, well, we are getting China. Hopefully they make some improvements to how the game runs. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they've tested it a lot. They don't want to release it with China and have everyone's PC ground to a halt just trying to run the game, but we'll see that as that gets announced tomorrow. So with that, hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you are new here. I cover Crusader Kings, all the news, all the announcements. Tomorrow we get Chapter 4 announcement. We'll know for sure what is coming, although we kind of already know, but we'll get everything with that news tomorrow. And I also do live streams where we do campaigns, we talk about news, and I cover other historical strategy games as well. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.